So over the weekend in London, there was a pro-Israel rally showing solidarity with the hostages who are being terrorised and abused inside of Gaza right now. Also just more generally showing support for Israel when the UK government have just said they're going to look towards recognising a Palestinian state in September unless Israel stops. I mean, talk about perverse incentives. Hamas are now thinking, well, beforehand, Marco Rubio said they were close to surrendering or ceasefire deal. Now they're thinking if we just make it to September and keep fighting, then the UK and other countries are going to recognise a Palestinian state, a huge win for them. So really, I mean, Starmer has blood on his hands in terms of what he's done there, in terms of Hamas continuing what they're doing. But I want to talk about a controversy that occurred. There are two progressive rabbis from progressive Judaism, liberal Reform Judaism, and they stood up and gave a speech and spoke about, among other things, the Palestinians' right to self-determination and their suffering and all those things. Now, I really understand the importance of Jewish unity, and I don't like having these kinds of conversations and showing these kinds of things, but I felt a duty to talk about this because most of the audience seemed to feel this was utterly inappropriate. And so I want to talk about how do we, first of all, what's my response to what they said? I'll show you what happened, and they were basically booed off and asked to leave. So I want to talk about, on the one hand, we need to have certain principles that we stand for and can't just stand for anything. But on the other hand, how you balance that with, with unity. Because to be honest, I would like to gently suggest that it's not necessarily the crowd who are being showing a lack of unity. If you're going to stand up and say things that are so hurtful and inappropriate and fly in the face of just reality on the ground, is it the crowd that are showing disunity or perhaps the speakers? Anyway, have a watch.
On October the 7th, 2023, Hamas unleashed horror on Israel and on all the Jews in the world. They murdered, burned and kidnapped, shattering lives and shattering peace. The responsibility for this war and for the agony it has brought lies with them. And still today they hold 50 hostages, living and dead. These are not statistics. They are mothers and fathers, children and grandparents. They have names, faces, birthdays missed, embraces delayed, and tragically funerals delayed too. They must come home. There is no higher priority for us. And this is why we stand here as one united Jewish community today. With all of our difference that we hold between us, we demand together that the hostages are brought home. This is an issue that belongs to all of us, and we stand in solidarity against Hamas and all who wish to destroy Jews and the Jewish state.
Last night, tens of thousands of Israeli Jews gathered on the streets to protest for the release of the hostages. They protested against Hamas. They protested against policies and rhetoric that doesn't allow the hostages to come home. And we must be brave and honest enough to do so. Rhetoric like this does lasting damage to Israel. With those protesting in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, and across Israel, we call for an end to this war through a deal that brings the hostages home and the permanent restoration of humanitarian aid to Gaza.
Let us be clear about Palestinian statehood. The Palestinian people, like us, have the right to self-determination. But how it is done matters too. We reject a methodology that tries to force this future through violence, terror, and the suffering of civilians. statehood cannot be built on the blood of innocents, and peace will never grow from the soil of pain and hatred.
We say this because we affirm our common humanity. We mourn for those who were murdered on October the 7th, for the soldiers who have fallen, for innocent civilians whose lives have been lost. Every life
with the greatest of respect, I have to say that it looks like the crowd and the grassroots are showing the way. They get it. And this is one of the things that we're seeing in our times today. The grassroots are understanding what some of our leaders and institutions, I'm saying even in the non-Jewish world, don't seem to understand. It's never nice to see this happening within the Jewish community. But to be honest, they were saying things which I believe to be just totally tone deaf and inappropriate and potentially just offensive. And it really comes down to just looking at reality clearly. This is not to say they're not well-intentioned people. I'm sure they're very well-intentioned. But we have to look at the reality. The reality, number one, is that right now, with what Hamas did to the Jewish people and what we are realizing the entire Palestinian cause has been about since its inception, has not been about statehood. It's just been about trying to kill the Jews. And we came to that realization so clearly after October 7th, where we had a mini Palestinian state with Gaza. And look what happened. They didn't want peace. And the majority of the Gazans also showed that they supported what Hamas did on October 7th, betrayed the people they came to work for in southern Israel, and gave the info over to Hamas. And so while we're still crying about our soldiers and our people suffering from this, and we're fighting, and we've got hostages, to start talking about, the Palestinians need to have self-determination, it's completely tone deaf, and more than that, it's quite offensive, because we're coming to realize that the Palestinian cause is not it's not been about self-determination. So you're kind of parroting lines that the masses have realized are not reflective of reality. And then again, to be talking about aid, and I understand the whole issue of aid is complicated, but at a time where Israel's basically, his hands have been a bit tied, really, where they're ending up having to provide all this aid into an enemy territory. And I'm not talking about the rights and wrongs of this, but the fact is, it's a very painful thing to do when you're fighting a genocidal enemy, the majority of which, of the population, support what Hamas did on October 7th. And whatever the rights and wrongs are of it, the fact that we're supplying aid there, when they've done this tragedy to us, and we've still got our hostages there, and we're still losing all our soldiers fighting this war, to be talking about that, when the point we're trying to make is the balance has been completely tipped against Israel's favour in public opinion. And then also to be talking about the hostages deal and the fact that there's some people in Israel who are saying, there needs to be a hostage deal at any price. Sounds like a lot of people on the ground are recognising the fact that actually you can't do absolutely anything at all to get a hostage deal, which could include emboldening Hamas and giving them the ability to regroup and do something even worse on October 7th, God forbid. We wouldn't give away Israel's existence to bring back the hostages. You're not going to do anything at all. You'll do what's reasonable. And that's the debate that's happening right now. And I think people are also waking up to that on the ground as well. They're waking up to the fact that you don't negotiate with terrorists because you then encourage terrorism. the thing that I feel like, how could we possibly ignore this as coincidence and just call it coincidence, is that Sinwar, the architect of October 7th, was released in a hostage deal where Gilad Shalit was released in return for 1,000 Palestinian criminals, terrorists, murderers. And he was the architect of October 7th. Is there surely not a lesson there? I pray every day for the hostages' release. And I hope that we can do it. But the way I understand Torah morality in hostage deals or anything like that is you bring your enemy to defeat, to surrender. If you negotiate, if you bargain, you end up putting your entire country as hostage because you tell them that terrorism pays. The issue that I think some people that push back on this is they say, well, we all need to be unified. We need disunity. Listen, if someone stood up there and started just saying entirely anti-Israel stuff, but they're Jewish, so they're a Jewish leader, so we have to support it, would you accept that? Of course not. Unity means we all unify. And yes, we may have differences on the ground, but to go out there, and I recognise it's a bit more subtle because it's not like they were going against, everything Israel's doing, and I know I'm sure they're well intentioned, but to be talking about Palestinian self-determination, which we know is a farce because that's not what they're after, from a study of history and from a study of the present and from a study of their own words. And it's this lie that we've paid for in blood, right? And to be talking about those kinds of things, and to be talking about some of the progressive protests in Israel that are saying Israel should stop the war regardless. These things promote disunity. So I would like to gently suggest that perhaps, was it the crowd that was showing disunity or the speakers? And the crowd is saying, no, we want unity right now. So that's what I would say. I'd also add, by the way, that the chief rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, got the message completely on the mark, and look at the crowd's response here.
If a terrorist organisation proscribed by the UK government is congratulating the UK government, it means that there is something seriously wrong. And so to our government we turn and we say, how will you ever be able to live with the fact that you would have recognized the Palestinian state, at the head of which is a terrorist organisation, with a stated intention of destroying the state of Israel and harming Jews right around the world, and all this at a time when the hostages are still languishing in the tunnels of Gaza? The Labour Party, both in opposition and now in government, has had a mantra. They have continuously been saying to UK jury, don't judge us by our words, judge us by our deeds. And to our government we say, right now, this is the time for responsible action. It is not too late.
Yeah. I mean, that's the message of the day. This is Melanie Phillips, who said, the two progressive rabbis booed off the stage by Jews at London's pro-hostages demonstration had equated Israel's government and Hamas by calling for protests against both, and said Israel's Gaza policy and Jewish extremist violence were doing lasting damage to Israel. There's something far worse than Jewish disunity. That's Jewish community leaders embracing Jews who parrot the malicious demonization of Israel, spewed by the enemies of the Jewish people, which has now poisoned wider society, in an agenda to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. That's worse than disgraceful, it's lethal self-harm. And again, this is why I say that we need to just understand, I don't even think it's disunity, we need to understand what our definition of disunity is. Unity doesn't mean we agree on everything, but we have to have a certain point that we all agree upon, which is that there's a brotherhood to the Jewish people, and to Israel and to protecting ourselves. And people that will say or do things that, potentially jeopardize that, that is in some ways a form of disunity. And, it's interesting. I said at the start that people are waking up. I hope I've played a small part in that effort, in trying to share the truth about the situation and the morality of the situation. But I just observe that many just among the grassroots are coming to recognize the truth. And it's funny, I did when I was watching these two speakers, and the fact that they're facing a crowd who feel very differently, I was reminded of a conversation I had, an interview I did with Rabbi Manis Friedman a few months ago, where I asked him, the Talmud says that the rabbis of the Talmud said, let Moshiach come, let the Messianic era be ushered in, the perfect world, the world in which truth and godliness and goodness is perpetuated everywhere. And the rabbis say, let Moshiach come, but let me not see him come. Let me not see it. And I wondered, what did that mean? I'd heard explanations in the past that's because there's going to be a lot of pain in the period before the Messianic era. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of suffering. And I said to Rabbi Friedman, what is that suffering going to be? What did they not want to see? Were the rabbis so scared of seeing, is it going to be like such terrible violence? I mean, we've seen terrible violence throughout Jewish history, and maybe some of them even had seen that through all the kind of wars that Israel had fought and invasions. And he said, what he meant by not see it was much more, let me not see it, was a much more sensitive point. That actually the final, ultimate war, showdown that's going to take place before the Messianic era is an ideological one, where people who have been worshipping certain gods, certain ideologies, certain perspectives, or believed falsehoods to be truth, they're going to have to go through a very painful transition of realizing that what they thought to be true was not the case. And for a sensitive soul, for a sensitive person, for these rabbis of the Talmud, seeing people realize that something they had fought their entire life for and base their whole life ideology and purpose around, to realize that was not true, or maybe not entirely true, or in part not true. That's very difficult for people. I know that when there's been times where I've suddenly realized something that I believed wasn't true, or something sometimes quite fundamental, it's quite earth-shattering. It can be good though, ultimately. You pick yourself up, but going through that process can be a pretty painful one. And that's just something I thought about when I saw this. But this reminds me why, number one, we have to have faith that the grassroots and the common wisdom of the people on the ground, we can trust that. People have that. And that's one of the themes of our times. Our leaders not getting it, but the people understanding. And that's why I feel like it's so important to keep doing what we're doing, to keep sharing the truth. And we're going to keep sharing the truth on this platform. One of the most important things to understand that not enough people do is that the cause and effect that the world tells us about Israel, the Israeli-Arab conflict, is the other way around. We are told Israel does something bad, the Arabs just respond. Actually, what if I told you that the cause and effect is Arab anti-Semitism, Arab ideological hatred, and the effect is Israel responds, Israel defends itself, protects itself? The proof of this is that Arab anti-Semitism and hostility to Jews predates Israel's re-establishment. Have a watch of our documentary on this very subject. And if you want to watch the full thing, you can click on the link in the video description. Picture yourself. It's 1834, and you're a Jew living in Tzfat, which is a northern city in Israel, then under the Ottoman Empire. Your family is part of this ancient city's spiritual heart for generations. You study Torah, you trade in the market, and live quietly among your Arab neighbors. But one day, a mob storms your street, shouting, "Kill the Jews!" Your home is looted, your synagogue burned, your loved ones beaten. This isn't about Israel. Israel won't exist for 114 years. This isn't about settlements, the IDF, or the 1948 displacements. This is raw, violent hatred aimed at you for being a Jew. And it's not just in Palestine, it's part of a centuries-old story of anti-Semitism woven into Arab and Islamic history, from the dawn of Islam to the streets of Hebron. The claim that this conflict began with Israel's creation, the Nakba, or modern policies, is a farce, a distortion that collapses under history's magnifying glass. Welcome to JTV Plus. I'm Ollie Annersfeld, and today we're uncovering a history too often buried, the relentless anti-Semitism among Arabs in Palestine before 1948, rooted in a broader Arab and Muslim hostility that began with Islam's inception in the 7th century. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.